Warning, this video contains intense scenes of horror, suspense, and disturbing imagery that may not be suitable for children under 13. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Some stories are so chilling, so unexplainable, they cling to you like a shadow long after the lights go out. Tonight, we'll uncover 3 terrifying stories, accounts of horror and the unknown that will haunt your dreams. But be warned, not all nightmares end when you wake up. Are you ready? Story 1. The Old Piano's Song. I moved into a shabby apartment while finishing my degree, drawn by its low rent and quiet location. Among its peculiarities was an antique piano left by a previous tenant. The piano sat in the corner of the living room, a relic of another era. Its keys were worn and yellowed, and when I brushed my fingers over them, they produced a sound both muted and mournful. I couldn't play, but the instrument added an odd charm to the otherwise lifeless space. It wasn't long before I noticed the faint notes. Late at night, while I studied, I would hear soft melodies drifting through the apartment. At first, I assumed it was the neighbors, though the music felt oddly close, as if it originated from within the walls. But one night, as the clock crept toward midnight, the sound grew louder. My stomach tightened as I realized it was coming from the living room. I hesitated, then walked toward the sound. The melody was slow and deliberate, the kind of tune that seeps into your bones. When I reached the doorway, I froze. The piano keys were moving on their own. Each press produced a haunting note, as if invisible hands were playing. The melody swelled, its dissonance clawing at the edges of my sanity before stopping abruptly. The silence that followed was suffocating, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes in the room. The next day, shaken, I questioned the landlord. His face darkened, and he reluctantly told me about a woman who had once lived in the apartment. She was a gifted pianist who had died tragically in the very room where the piano sat. Her final performance had been left unfinished, the melody incomplete. I moved out shortly after, leaving the piano behind. But even now, when I walk past that old building, I swear I can hear it. A faint, sorrowful tune floating through the air, as if she is still there, desperately trying to complete her final song. Story 2. The Doll in the Glass Case. As a collector of rare artifacts, I took pride in uncovering treasures with rich histories. When I acquired an antique doll from a New England estate sale, I felt an undeniable thrill. The porcelain doll, encased in a glass box, was exquisite, its face delicately painted, its eyes glassy and unnervingly lifelike. The previous owner muttered warnings about its history, but I dismissed them as eccentric ramblings. The doll fit perfectly among my collection, yet its presence seemed heavier, almost oppressive. From the moment I brought it home, the atmosphere in my house shifted. Footsteps echoed faintly at night, the sound of bare feet on wooden floors. Doors creaked open slowly, as though someone unseen was wandering the halls. One morning, the unease reached a crescendo. I walked into my study to find the doll sitting in my rocking chair. Its glass case stood empty on the shelf. The chair swayed gently, as if recently disturbed, and the doll's eyes seemed to follow me as I backed away. Determined to understand the strange events, I set up a camera to monitor the room overnight. The footage was chilling. As the house lay silent, the doll's head turned in deliberate, unnatural movements, its eyes blinking slowly. A faint sound, like a child's laughter, rose and fell, barely audible but unmistakable. The air on the recording seemed to ripple, as if the room itself had drawn breath. By morning, the oppressive energy was unbearable. I returned the doll to the estate, leaving it on the doorstep as the first light broke over the horizon. The house fell silent after that, but the memory of those glassy eyes lingers. Even now, I can feel them, unblinking and watchful, in the corners of my mind. Some objects carry more than just history. They carry fragments of lives, fragments that refuse to let go. Story 3. The Shadow in the Room. When my grandmother passed away, I inherited her countryside home, an aging, creaking relic filled with memories and remnants of a life quietly lived. As I sifted through her belongings, something caught my eye. An old, weathered notebook hidden in her bedside drawer. The pages were crammed with strange entries, most of them concerning a figure she called the Shadow, a presence that, according to her, haunted her every night, lurking in the far corner of her bedroom. At first, I dismissed it as the ramblings of a woman who had spent too many years alone in an old house. But when I slept there for the first time, I felt something shift. The air around me seemed to thicken, pressing against my skin, suffocating in its heaviness. I lay in the dark, eyes wide open, heart pounding in my chest, and instinctively turned toward the far corner of the room. There, in the deepest shadow, stood a figure, darker than the surrounding darkness, an unnatural silhouette. It was motionless, as though it had materialized from the void itself. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of my mind, a figment of my imagination brought on by the weight of the night. But over the next few days, the feeling of being watched grew more intense, more suffocating. I woke, shivering, to an empty room, but the presence was always there, in the corner, waiting, unseen but always felt. Then one evening I found the notebook open on the bedside table, a new entry scrawled across the page in what looked like my late grandmother's handwriting. "It's coming for you too! Get out!" The words burned themselves into my mind. Panic crept up my spine like cold fingers, and I could no longer ignore the weight of the air pressing down on me. I had to leave. I sold the house soon after, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I wake with the unshakable feeling that the shadow is still watching, still waiting. Some mysteries defy explanation, leaving us questioning what's real and what lies beyond. If these stories left you with goosebumps, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to A Twisted Mind. New horrors await you every week, so hit that bell icon and join us, if you dare. Sleep tight.